Hello everyone. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hello. Hola a todos. ¿Cómo están? Hello
Hello.
everyone. Welcome to this hangout space. How are you doing, Lavajer?
Doing quite well. Doing quite
Excellent.
well. Weather's
Excellent.
warming up.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Hello everyone. Welcome to this hanging out space. How are you doing? Hola Luis, ¿cómo va todo? Well, welcome to this edition of the Nirvana Overdrive. We're going to do this if you don't mind, in Spanish and English. So I'm going to back and forth translate me all the time. But don't. If you have any question, of course, please stop me. And remember, this is a place to hang out a little bit. So at any point, if you need questions, comments, whatever you want, you're more than free to ask. Hola a todos. Bueno, bienvenidos a la. Bienvenidos a esta edición del Nirvana Overdrive. Recuerden que esto es un encuentro, entonces es más para charlar, para compartir, con lo cual todo lo que quieran comentar, todo lo que quieran charlar, más que bienvenidos. Hola Nico, hola Neil.
Hola, ¿cómo va?
Bien, todo bien, por suerte. I'm so glad that we're seeing so many faces. Hey Manolo, ¿cómo anda Manolo? ¿Todo bien? Hello everyone. So we
Buenas
have.
tardes a todos.
¿Cómo?
Buenas tardes a todos, a todos.
Buenas tardes. Manolo says, well, good afternoon, everyone. So, welcome everyone to this new edition. For those of you who just participating the first time, essentially this is kind of a quarterly meet, right? Where we hang out, where we share teachings, where we just discuss what's going to come in the next month. So, hey, Ada. So please feel free to mute yourself. Feel free to just interact, right? So it's no or chat or to do whatever it is. It's less a formal teaching and it's more. Yes, we're going to have some formal teachings, but it's more of a hangout. Yeah.
Ini acá, vení.
O sea, nada, como decía antes, recuerden que para aquellos que son nuevos, este es el encuentro que tenemos trimestralmente. Es menos me voy a poner menos una iniciación o una enseñanza formal, es más un encuentro, así que para charlar y para encontrar un poquito de qué va la onda. So, before we start with the general activities and everything else, I want to let you know a little bit, because we have a pretty complex year ahead of us. We have a year in which we're going to have a lot of activities, but I think it's going to be a nice year, right? It's going to be a year full of experiences and growth. Si les parece, antes de empezar, les quería contar algunas novedades, que vamos a tener un año que va a estar como así intenso, pero me parece que lleno de crecimiento, ¿no? Y lindas experiencias. So first, the main trips and teachings of this year. We're going to have at least two. We're working probably on a third. That's going to happen at some point in the year, but so far we can announce the dates of two major gatherings and teachings in person that you can come if you like, or we're going to stream them, which are the Mara Roast, which you already probably know, and that's going to be on the 30th of May to the 6th of June in Buenos Aires, and another teaching in Mexico from the 15th to the 18th of November. So these are locked. These are going to happen regardless. So if you like to start working on, if you need vacation days or you want to share the space and you want to get some tickets, please talk to us. We're going to talk next week. Sí, Luis, vamos para allí. Vamos para allí. Lo que decía es, vamos a tener dos enseñanzas que ya están listas, vamos a tener probablemente una más, pero dos ya están listas, que es el Mara Roast, que es del 30 de mayo al 6 de junio, y acá en Buenos Aires, y una enseñanza en México, del 15 de noviembre, del 15 al 19 de noviembre. Así que esos días, si pueden, vayan reservando, si quieren pasar. In both of them, we're going to have a lot of activities. Not only we're going to hang out, but we're going to have, for example, the Mara Roast. Then we'll publish all the activities very soon, probably after this week. But we're going to have a special Chakasambara empowerment and a workshop on Tumo and the 6 yogas, as well as a lot of teachings from the Padesha class. So it's going to be very intense. And in Mexico, we're going to have a series of a lot of talks about meditation and some mini retreats about it. So it's going to be a nice thing. Por un lado, decía, acá en Buenos Aires vamos a tener un montón de enseñanzas, vamos a tener una enseñanza especial de Chakasambara, que es una iniciación muy larga, y talleres de Tumo, los 6 yogas, y en México vamos a tener un montón de talleres de meditación. Probably, Luis va a ser principalmente en Veracruz, vamos a estar en Ciudad de México, vamos a estar un par de días en Ciudad de México, yo tengo que ir a ver gente de Casa Tibe, tengo que ir a ver gente del colegio de México, así que yo por lo menos voy a estar un par de días en México. Podemos organizar también una actividad en México, en Ciudad de México. Tú estás ahí, ¿no, Luis? Bueno, si quieres, después hablamos y coordinamos. Yo seguro que tengo que ir a un par de lugares, pero por ahí podemos aprovechar y hacer alguna enseñanza también en Ciudad de México. Ya estamos ahí, perfecto. Y después vamos a Veracruz, que es donde está la gente de Capac Veracruz. We're just saying we'll probably do something both in Mexico and in Veracruz, right? Where we will. Excellent. Pues después hablamos, después nos contactamos. And we're on the works of having something else in the US, right? But we're still this is still on progressing, so at this point we cannot confirm dates. Y por otro lado, vamos a tener alguna actividad más en Estados Unidos, pero todavía estamos en proceso de confirmación, todavía no queremos decir fechas. But what is very important is that early next year, we're probably going to have our next Mara Roast 2025 at Bodh Gaya in India, right? So we should start planning also to that. It's, as you see, a lot of things, right? But on the other hand, remember, none of this is compulsory. None of this is an obligatory thing. But it's a nice thing to start doing this kind of activities all together, right? We came together in the pandemic. Most of us, Lavashab and myself, were working before that, but most of the group either was working with me, but as a group, we came together in the pandemic. So it's nice to start being able to see each other, I think. También en 2025 vamos a estar en Bodh-Gaya, en la India, para hacer el Mara Roast. Por supuesto, todo esto es objetivo, quien pueda puede, quien no puede no puede, no hay drama, pero es lindo por encontrarse, ¿no? Por lo menos alguna vez en el año, siendo que empezamos en la pandemia como grupo. Así que nada, tenemos un montón de cosas. So we have this lot of activities. As a general thing, we're finishing in a couple of months the first P2 cohort, and we're starting P3. And also I need to explain a little bit because a lot of people here are in P2. I just want to let you know that we're going to finish P2 around April, May, just before the Mara Roast. And after Mara Roast, we're already going to pick up P3. What we're going to do with P3s is a rolling wave of P3s. So what we're going to do is we're going to offer non-draw and the full training in one of these different systems that we hold, and we're going to start rolling them down. First, we're going to start one, and that's going to probably take 2 or 3 years. Then, after we finish that, instead of repeating that, we're going to do one other and other, and we're going to probably rely on our new llamas to help us keep rolling the other ones, right? The ones that were before. Yes, P2 is also in cohorts. We have currently 2. Because also P2 has a lot of, well, not a lot of empowerments, but it has a major empowerment, a Wangtian. So it is, and also it's a little bit more involved and takes longer, takes around 1.5 years. So it's going to be a little bit older. The next one of the P2s is going to be probably, I would say, when the P1, when one of the cohorts ends around May, we're going to start a new cohort of P2. So that's probably next available date. Entonces decía, vamos a empezar el P3 dentro de poco para que ya esté el P2. P2 va en cortes, va a terminar tipo en abril, mayo, y después va a empezar el P3. Y vamos a tener diferentes P3 basados en cada uno de los sistemas. So probably the first one that we're going to offer is going to be what's called the 13 Golden Dharmas. This is a major Sakya teaching, and essentially it's a collection of deities that end up with Vajra Yogini, which is kind of one of the crown deities of the Sakya system. But what we thought about it was that it has both a major system, which is the Vajra Yogini in it, and also 12 other, actually 13, because you get a 1 plus deity before you start, that are kind of specialized for different areas. You get wealth deities, you get protectors, you get magnetizing deities, you got deities for every single area. So our idea is when you finish P3, you should have basically both completion stage and a general toolset, right? And at that point, you can choose to either become a Nagapka, if you like, to continue, which is kind of a tantric sorcerer, or if you like, there's some further training to become a Lama. Entonces, lo que vamos a empezar probablemente sea por los 13 armas dorados, que es una colección de deidades que termina con Vajra Yogini, que es un sistema muy importante de la Sakya, y que esencialmente les da una deidad para todo, una deidad para cada cosa que ustedes quieran. So that's just the beginning of the year. We're going to have a lot more. The good thing is, I think that we're in a moment where we have this momentum and inertia, right? We're kind of pushing ahead, and there's more people joining in, and there's more interest. So in a way, it is a good moment for us, and we need to strike where the arrow is hot. So if at some point this year is too intense, also remember this is something that is self-paced. You let us know how intense you want things to be, right? Y por otro lado, recuerden que hay un montón de cosas. Si hay unas cuestiones demasiado, cada uno puede tomar el tiempo que quiera, ¿no? Simplemente estamos en un momento de crecimiento y queremos como aprovechar este crecimiento. Después las cosas se frenan y ya se quitan. En ese sentido, aprovechemos cuando estamos creciendo. So, any question, any comment about any of this? ¿Alguna consulta o comentario de esto?
Fede, quería preguntarte, dijiste que después ibas a subir la parte 2. ¿La vas a explicar? Yo todavía no pude bajar lo que enviaste porque lo habías enviado en otro mail que no lo pude abrir. Así que ahora en estos días ya me pongo más al tanto. Igual estoy haciendo las prácticas esas que habías dicho al principio. Pero esa es la pregunta. ¿Vas a explicar el 2
En la
o
parte
tenemos
2
que leer?
ya está,
Sí.
no, ya
Ah,
están
¿ya está?
dando, o sea,
Ah,
la próxima oportunidad va a ser para unirte, Neil, en mayo más o menos, mayo, junio,
bueno.
son una
Ah,
cohorte y dura un año y
tan
medio,
rápido. Ah,
claro, un año y
buenísimo,
medio
claro,
más o
porque
menos de tiempo para el cual vos
bien.
tenés que practicar. Es como el uno, se manda por mail, todos, pero también tiene una serie
Ah,
de inscripciones.
bueno. Bueno, buenísimo, gracias.
Igual vamos a avisar con tiempo, Neil, no te preocupes.
Sí, porque yo dije, todo junto, dije, no voy a tener tiempo de hacer las prácticas. No, está bien, está
No,
bien.
so Neil was asking. She wants to know where we're going to give the P2. I was telling her like around May, because she just finished the P1, right? And wanted some time to get us a lot of practice. And I was telling yes, we're going to let you know with time. Also, guys, remember it's not compulsory. You can stay one level, right, for as long as you need. Tara says, "Oh, thank you, Tara. Yes, I hope we are going to. It's going to take some time because the idea is not that we're going to do like the Saki does, which is you go and they give you the empowerments and that's it. But we're going to try space out empowerments, and we're going to try to get you to basically practice one of the days after the other, right? So the idea is probably you will have one empowerment every 2-3 months for a couple of years, but especially the last one, the last three ones, which are the three Ganchomas, the three Vajrayoginis, these are probably some of the highest teachings that Sagas has, along with Lambda, right? So this will probably take some time to get it. We need to do a small couple of retreats, but it's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful system. Le decía a Tara que si esto vamos a dar las 13 Dharmas, va a ser a lo largo de 2 o 3 años, pero sí, please ask about the mantras. Well, here's the thing: if you cannot complete them by the time to start, you're going to have to do them as long as you're doing non-drum. We're going to have a non-drum list, right? Like in most electric systems, so you can keep doing those and accumulating them for the non-drum. The thing is, you need them when you are going to get the major empowerments of P3. So you kind of have like 1 year, 1.5 years time if we count it from today to have them. But let's say that you don't get them, you don't finish them, then you have to wait until the next wave. We need to have at least, because it's a very strong yogic system. Though all the systems in P3 are going to be like very yogic, and they're going to be very disruptive. So you need to have one deity that destroy obstacles down before you take it for your own good, right? So it's manageable. Preguntaba de qué pasamos con el tema si no llegamos con los mantras del P2. Bueno, tenemos un tipito más hasta que tengan las deidades claves, pero hay que tenerlos. No se puede ya eso porque son sistemas que son como muy experienciales. Entonces, si uno no tiene una deidad de sacar obstáculos, es un problema. Es un tema. So, with everything said, shall we start? Shall we start today's practice? Erickson, Lamachile, which one of you want to go first?
I can go first if that's cool.
Yes, that's perfect. Entonces, Erickson va a empezar. Erickson, would you like to share your screen? Or should
I will set it up here. Just give me a sec.
No problem at all. Entonces vamos a empezar primero con una pequeña... Meanwhile, what we can do is, if you like, let's take refuge all together very quickly. Well, Erickson set things up by saying, y ahora tomemos refugio, si les parece, todos juntos, diciendo Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Dhammaya. Namo Sanghaya. Om Bodhicitta Upadayami. Thank you. Erickson, whenever you like.
Great. Thank you, Lama Fede. Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you again this afternoon. Today I've chosen to talk about what I call Rebel Buddha, or taking emotions as the path.
Bueno, Erickson dice buenas tardes a todos, muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros. Hoy quiere hablar un poquito de lo que él llama el Buda rebelde, o tomar las emociones como parte del camino.
And from my personal experience, this is a topic that comes up both in my personal practice and with the clients with whom I work. And so it's very dear to my heart and something that I think lacks a little bit in a lot of modern Buddhist presentations of practice.
Esto es algo que le pasa a él, que lo ve muchísimo en su trabajo, en su carrera profesional, y que le parece que falta a veces un poquito en las presentaciones modernas de budismo.
And for my talk today, I'm not going to focus so much on the academic or theoretical understanding of emotions, but rather on the practical aspects of working with them. So no deep dive into the skandhas, kleshas, 12 links of dependent origination, or such.
Entonces, hoy no quiere preocuparse tanto de la parte académica, sino que quiere hablar un poquito, no se va a entrar tanto en los skandhas, en los kleshas, sino una forma práctica para trabajar en ellas.
And for some reason, my slides are not advancing, so we might be going without slides today. So,
would you like me to share it?
If you can, yeah, because for whatever reason, it's deciding not to work.
Don't worry. Let me just set it up. Display settings. And are you seeing my screen?
I do.
Let me see.
Thank you. Yes, now we're where we need to be. Thank you for your patience, everyone. And so to set up the context of this, not everything I will discuss today is going to be purely dharmic, but certainly going to be pragmatic and how to actually work with the emotions.
Para poner el contexto de todo, no todo lo que va a estar hablando va a ser dármico, pero sí va a servir de una forma pragmática para trabajar con las emociones.
And additionally, I will only go into depth into the sutric teachings while highlighting the tantric approach. And last, if you're experiencing any mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider when engaging in any of these practices.
Y si como disclaimer, él va a hablar principalmente a nivel sútrico, comentar algo a nivel tántrico, pero que si tienen algún problema grande con esto, por favor siempre recuerden de consultarlo con su médico o terapeuta.
And if you want to advance the next slide. And to set the stage, let me take and share two quotes and an insight real quick. And this first quote, I think, really sums up where we're going to go today.
Primero, él va a dar dos citas y esta primera cita esencialmente muestra lo que él quiere decir hoy, ¿no?
This is what wakefulness is, simply looking at what it is we're doing. It means instead of being led by our conditioned, automatic, reactive way of being, we become deeply curious about what is arising in our body, our mind, and the world around us.
Esto es lo que es estar despierto, ¿no? Simplemente ver lo que surge, ver lo que estamos haciendo. En vez de funcionar de forma reactiva, nos volvemos curiosos de lo que surge en nuestro cuerpo, en nuestra mente y en el mundo alrededor nuestro.
And next slide, please. And here, I think, is a really important insight in working with emotions and doing it from the bodhisattva level, that this practice is actually about vulnerability. and that the practice of a bodhisattva is really the willingness to go to difficult places, knowing we might get burned or get really uncomfortable.
Y esto, una cosa que quiere decir es que muchas veces la gente no se olvida que el trabajo del bodhisattva es ser vulnerable en lugares en los cuales no nos sentimos cómodos o podemos ser dolidos, ¿no?
And next slide. And this last quote, I think, really sets the stage. It's not the objects of desire, aversion, or ignorance that trap us, but rather our reaction or response to these things.
Y aquí es la segunda cita que dice, es que no son los objetos de deseo lo que nos atrapa, sino nuestra respuesta a los objetos de deseo.
Next slide. And so here's the meat of the matter. Negative emotions often get a bad rap because we have not fully developed the discernment or ability to work with them skillfully. And simply stated, the disturbing emotions are a distortion of the five wisdoms.
El problema es que muchas veces las emociones negativas están mal vistas, pero en realidad no son otras cosas que distorsiones de las 5 sabidurías.
And emotions in and of themselves are neither good nor bad. And the good news, it just takes some awareness and practice to work with them effectively.
Las emociones no son ni buenas ni malas, simplemente son, y si uno tiene suficiente conciencia puede trabajar con ellas.
Next slide. So what I'm going to present today are 3 methods for working with the emotions. First is response ability, our ability to respond. Second is signposting. And third is the acronym of ARTS.
Y le voy a mostrar 3 métodos para trabajar con emociones negativas. Responsabilidad o respuestabilidad, la capacidad de responder a las emociones. Signposting es como poner carteles. Y un acrónimo que le llama ARTS.
Next slide, thank you. So the first one, with responsibility, we bear witness through our attention, learning that we have agency.
Entonces, la primera es que nosotros nos damos cuenta que con nuestra atención, al ponernos enfocados en nuestra atención, nos damos cuenta que tenemos agencia.
Emotions are not disturbing in themselves, but rather we disturb emotions by interfering with their natural course of arising and dissipating. And this insight from Ponlop Rinpoche has stuck with me.
Entonces, las emociones no son responsables en sí mismas, sino que nuestra respuesta es lo que les da poder. Y este insight de Batman Rinpoche siempre le pareció importante.
The first task is to come to awareness in the midst of our emotional arisings. With awareness, we can tease out the distinction. I have the capacity to either react or consciously respond.
Lo primero es darse cuenta, es volverse consciente de que uno está en una situación compleja emocionalmente y entender que en ese lugar uno puede o reaccionar o tener una respuesta más consciente.
Here we have agency and the ability to respond, knowing that our actions bear fruit. We get to choose the course.
Entendiendo que nosotros tenemos la posibilidad de reaccionar y de responder, nosotros podemos saber que nuestras acciones tienen fruto, con lo cual podemos elegir el fruto de lo que va a surgir.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So here's what we want to do. Ideally, we neither want to avoid nor release our emotional energy. We want to focus on the emotional energy rather than the trigger, and come to know its nature and channel its energy with compassion.
Entonces, esta es la forma de trabajarlas. Idealmente no tenemos que ni evitarlas ni reprimirlas, pero tampoco dejar expresarlas, ¿no? Para que se vaya la energía. Lo que tenemos que hacer es enfocarnos más en la energía emocional más que en el objeto que desencadena la emoción. Y tenemos que conocer su naturaleza y reenfocarla con compasión.
It's usually due to the uncomfortable nature of our negative emotions that we usually want to be done with them quickly. So we try to bury them, which is a form of self-neglect, or we unleash them upon someone or something, which is a form of abuse. And ultimately, our emotions are our own responsibility.
Como nos parece poco confortable gestionar las emociones, tendemos a o reprimirlas, en cuyo caso se vuelve una forma de daños a nosotros mismos, o se las tiramos por la cabeza a alguien, en cuyo caso nos volvemos abusivos. Lo que queremos intentar es encontrar una forma de transformarlas.
If we use the analogy of water, we can repress and compact them like ice, channel or flow the emotions like a liquid, or discharge or permeate the environment like vapor or fiery plasma.
Imaginemos las emociones como los tres estados de un líquido. Congelarla y compactarla. Podemos descargarla, calentarla para que se haya para cualquier lado, como el vapor o el plasma, pero también podemos dirigirla cuando está en estado líquido.
But when we work with these methods and they become our default, we can see where our habit patterns are formed. And again, we have a choice point. We can channel our emotional energy appropriately.
Pero cuando trabajamos con estos métodos, de repente nos damos cuenta que nosotros tenemos unos hábitos que se forman y podemos redirigir la emoción para que esos patrones no se generen.
Next slide, please. And in choosing to channel the energy of the emotions constructively or sit with them until its energy naturally dissipates, we learn how to metabolize and transform them.
Al sentarnos y mantener esas emociones presentes en nosotros y conocerlas bien, entendemos cómo metabolizarlas y transformarlas.
When we acknowledge our emotions, when we feel them, when we call out their names and speak to their names, we do not identify with them.
Cuando les ponemos un nombre, ya no nos identificamos con ellos, sino que sabemos que nos están pasando.
And this distinction is crucial with working with emotions. We choose to say, I feel anger, instead of I am angry or anger. Because when we identify, it gets us hooked into playing out their energy instead of inquiring, why did it arise? What does it have to tell us?
Dice, es importante entender esta pequeña distinción cuando trabajamos las emociones. No decir, siento ira o siento enojo más que estoy enojado o soy enojado. Porque de esa forma tenemos cierta distancia y podemos empezar a trabajar con las emociones más que identificarnos completamente con ellas.
And that's one of the beauty of emotions. When we pay attention to them, they ask us how to respond to something that's showing up in our experience, or do we need to look at a habituated pattern of reaction?
Esa es la belleza de las emociones. Cuando surgen, nos interpelan para entender si es un problema de un patrón que se repite o es algo que tenemos que pensar cómo creativamente trabajamos.
Next slide, please. Thank you. Now we move on to the second method of signposting.
Y ahora vamos al segundo método, que es el método de los carteles.
And this is an insight, it's a secular insight from the work of Carla McLaren, but it works very well with this approach.
Es un insight del trabajo de Carla McLaren que funciona muy bien combinado con la aproximación.
From this, we see that each emotional arising is a signpost. It signals an interaction with ourselves, other, or external circumstances that require our attention.
Y en ese sentido, vemos las emociones como un cartel que nos avisa que hay una interacción entre nosotros mismos o con otras circunstancias externas que requiere atención.
Next slide, please. And here I've given you a negative emotion decoder ring, a secret little panel of what do the emotions actually say? How can I take and work with them in inquiry?
Y aquí él nos da un pequeño como anillo de codificación para entender qué es lo que pueden estar queriendo decir estas emociones negativas.
Let's take the example of anger. Anger often indicates that our boundaries have been breached.
Tomemos, por ejemplo, ira. La ira generalmente tiene que ver con cuando nuestros límites son traspasados, son violentados.
And taking and pulling back from looking at the trigger to the actual message of anger, we can ask, what do I value? What must be protected and restored in this moment?
Entonces, si nos corremos un poquito de lo que desencadenó la ira, quizás lo que nos tenemos que preguntar es qué es lo que valoro que está siendo vulnerado y qué es lo que yo siento que tiene que ser protegido o tiene que ser restaurado.
With these questions, you can take and ponder when the disturbing emotions arise as to what are they pointing to. They provide a window as to what lies underneath the surface so we don't get hooked and act out their energy in ignorance.
Con estas preguntas quizás ustedes pueden tener una pequeña idea de qué es lo que nos está, a qué nos está apuntando, ¿no? A qué nos está diciendo para entender qué es lo que lo desencadena, por qué sentimos eso y qué acciones tenemos que tomar.
Because what we want to avoid is if we choose not to work and transform our emotional energies so that they can be channeled through us, we get constipated and samsara continues to spin away.
Dice, si nosotros no transformamos, si nosotros simplemente evitamos trabajar con estas energías, nos vamos a constipar, ¿no? Y samsara nos va a terminar, nos va a seguir haciendo girar.
And we can go on to the next slide. Now we come to the framework of arts. And in my own Dharma practice, this has been invaluable to me for how to work with emotions intelligently and how to act more like a bodhisattva.
Entonces vamos al marco de arts, que esto para su propia práctica ha sido importantísimo para trabajar y practicar ser un bodhisattva.
And this is uniquely Dharmic in that it was developed by a Dharmically oriented psychologist, Andrew Holasek, and is based on the levels of vows, and the magic comes to us from meeting us where we are in the moment.
Esto lo desarrolló Andrew Holasek, que es un psicólogo budista, y tiene que ver con los niveles de los votos, ¿no? Y en qué momento pueden aplicar la magia de la transformación.
Next slide, please. And if you were with me for the last Nirvana Overdrive, you're going to recognize the fire metaphor here, but it works well with the arts framework as well.
Si ustedes ya estuvieron escuchándolo en el último Nirvana Overdrive, van a encontrar de vuelta el uso de la metáfora del fuego, pero también funciona con el acrónimo arts.
And first, at the level of the Shravaka or the Arhat, foundational Buddhism, we look at abandoning. It's what shall I avoid?
Entonces, primero si lo vemos en el nivel del Shravaka, o en el nivel de los oyentes, acá lo primero que decimos es, ¿qué tengo que evitar? ¿No? Si estamos en ese nivel, lo importante acá es evitar las cosas que nos hacen mal.
And then from the Bodhisattva or Mahayana point of view, we look at remediation. What am I with in relationship and how can I remediate the situation?
Pero una vez que estamos un poquito más estables, estamos en el Mahayana, podemos pensarlo como un ¿qué remediar? ¿Con qué tengo una relación en este momento que me genera esto? ¿Y cómo la puedo remediar?
And then next we look at it from the point of view of Tantra or the yogi and the work of transmuting the energies. How can I work with the energy directly?
Luego podemos verlo desde el punto de vista del yogi, ¿no? Y ya pensamos en transmutar. ¿Cómo puedo trabajar con la energía directamente?
And then lastly, from the point of view of a Vidyadhara or the Dzogchen or Mahamudra paths, we look at self-liberation. What is dissipating in its own ground?
Luego, desde el punto de vista de un Vidyadhara, a nivel de Dzogchen o Mahamudra, podemos ver el autoliberación, qué es lo que se disipa en su propia base.
Next slide, please. So the way that I choose to work with this is start from your highest level and work down. So wherever you're at on the path, start from that point and then work down.
Entonces, la forma que yo trabajo con esto es, empezamos del nivel más alto que nosotros podemos meter y ahí vamos para abajo.
So personally, I work it from self-liberation on down. And let's start with self-liberation.
Empecemos, yo personalmente empiezo a nivel de autoliberación y empecemos ahí como un ejemplo.
I won't go too far into this, so if you have not been introduced to Adi, I'm going to leave it a little bit secret and a little bit fuzzy, so consult with your guru. if you haven't received or have received for further instructions.
Por supuesto, esto él no va a entrar mucho en terminología Dzogchen, así que si hay una duda, cualquier cosa, después tienen que hablarlo con nosotros, ¿no? Para el tema de la parte de la práctica Dzogchen.
But the basic gist of this is, when you recognize your emotional reactivity, the question to ask is, now, in this moment of naked awareness, can I be with this emotion and allow it to dissipate in its own ground, realizing its dreamlike nature?
Sí. Pero básicamente, en el momento que nosotros nos damos cuenta de que es una emoción negativa, podemos pensarnos, ahora puede ser que ahora pueda mantenerme con esta emoción hasta que se disipe su propia naturaleza como un sueño.
If in that moment of emotional arising, you can't deal with it at that level, then switch down into the transmuting or the tantric level.
Y si en ese momento no podemos, la verdad, porque estamos demasiado enganchados, vamos al nivel tántrico.
And here are some questions that you can ask. Can I be with the energy that is arising, observe and feel it? What are its edges?
Entonces, ese momento, decimos, bueno, ok, puedo estar, igual mantenerme un poquito con esta energía, puedo sentir cuáles son como sus bordes.
Does it have a shape, a tempo, mood, sensations like hot or cold?
Tiene una forma, tiene un tiempo, tiene sensaciones, es cálida o es fría.
Where do I feel it in my body? Can I sit with it and be with it without getting caught in it?
¿Dónde la siento en el cuerpo? ¿Me puedo sentar o mantenerme sin quedarme atrapado en ella, sin quedarme en ella?
Does it bring up images or memories?
¿Trae imágenes o memorias?
And the last question, how can I honor its message and allow it to dissolve back into emptiness?
Y la última pregunta es, ¿cómo puedo honrar su mensaje y dejar que se disuelva en la hoguera?
And with certain Dharma teachings, there are other ways to meet it at this level in the creation and completion state practices. Again, consult with your guru.
Por supuesto, para otras prácticas, por ejemplo, más tántricas o eso, consultar con.
And with practice, just bringing this level of awareness to your emotional life creates a greater capacity for resilience, a space to hold the energy, and the wisdom to how to channel the energy.
Y por supuesto, con esto uno puede conseguir una con mayor práctica, uno puede llegar a tener mayor capacidad para sostener la energía y disolverla.
And also on the website, Lama Sherab has given a great long transmission of his 5 masks, which goes into the 5 wisdoms from his cycle called Naktuyantik.
Y luego en el sitio web, Lama Sherab tiene una transmisión de una enseñanza del Naktuyantik, su ciclo que son las 5 máscaras, que esencialmente habla de cada una de estas 5 emociones principales.
Then, if we find that we can't do it through transmuting the energies, then we go into remediation.
Entonces, si nos damos cuenta que no podemos transmutar la energía, nos vamos a la remediación.
Here we work with the 6 paramitas, the bodhisattva vows, or the lojongs.
Acá trabajamos con las paramitas, con los votos de bodhisattva o los lojongs.
The basic approach is to use a slogan to create a pause, a point of reflection, and then apply an antidote.
El eslogan básico es esencialmente pensar, trabajar los puntos de reflexión y aplicar un antídoto.
Here's a quick example. When I'm feeling hate, take a moment, pause. How do I generate love?
Este es un ejemplo muy simple. Por ejemplo, cuando yo siento odio, pausamos un momento, tomamos un espacio y luego buscamos la forma de generar amor.
With pride, how can I generate equanimity?
Con orgullo, generar ecuanimidad.
Jealousy, how may I create joy?
Cuando sentimos celos, pensamos cómo puedo crear felicidad.
With passion or desire, how can I find appreciation in this?
En compasión o deseo, cómo puedo generar apreciación.
And lastly, with ignorance, how can I create accommodation or being with?
Y entonces, con ignorancia, ¿cómo puedo entender cómo funcionan las cosas o cómo puedo permanecer en la ignorancia observando.
Or if you have no Lojong transmission, a simple question of, in this moment that I recognize this, how do I choose to react or respond?
O si estamos practicando una reunión en particular, podemos pensar en este momento en que estoy sintiendo esto, ¿cómo elijo responder?
And last, we come to the point of, what shall I abandon?
Finalmente llegamos al punto de que abandono.
If the past three don't work, then it's usually best just to take ourselves out of the situation in the moment for our own or others' well-beings.
Si esos otros tres no funcionan, bueno, entonces por ahí es mejor tomar un espacio, hacer un espacio entre nosotros y la situación por el bien de todos.
Sometimes we just need to avoid people, places, or situations until we build capacity for resilience, such as an alcoholic avoiding bars or having alcohol at home.
Si a veces simplemente tenemos que evitar las situaciones, como un alcohólico que no va a ir a bares o que no va a tener alcohol en la casa.
This last approach is the most dualistic approach as it's object-based. It's me versus the emotion, abandoning whatever disturbs.
Esta aproximación es por ahí la más dualística, porque es la objeción contra mí, ¿no? Y abandono lo que no funciona.
But at the end of a long day or in a highly triggered atmosphere, it can be the most effective way to handle it without creating any negative karma.
Pero dice, un día largo, una situación en la que está muy cargada de atmósfera, a veces es la mejor forma.
And so, as a quick wrap up, these are three ways that you can take and begin to work with your emotions to generate more compassion, resilience, and self-knowledge.
Entonces, como una forma de hacer un pequeño resumen, estas son las tres maneras de trabajar, las tres formas de trabajar con las emociones.
And you were right on cue, Lama Fe, if you want to go to the last slide.
Sorry.
So here's the creed of the Rebel Buddha: respond rather than react.
Entonces, es el credo del Buda rebelde, responder más que reaccionar.
And with that, thank you very much.
Eso, muchas gracias. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This was wonderful. This Rebel Buddha post and series of teaching is amazing. Thank you so much.
You.
Muchas gracias. So, anyone has any comment or any question for us? One thing I'd like to ask, well, people type or they basically mute themselves, it's which one was the book of Andrew Holosak where he delineates the arts? It's wonderful. It's a wonderful book.
I believe it's The Power and the Pain. I've got it right here. Let me check.
Sure. I'm going to get it right now. I love the way it's framed.
Yeah, The Power and the Pain.
Getting it right now. Le preguntaba cuál era el libro de Andrew Holosak que tiene esto y él me decía The Power and the Pain. Andrew Holosak. Ya lo estoy consiguiendo. Yes, Lamajiri.
Brother Erickson, how would you recommend someone to behave or help, really, someone else who is angry often and yells quite frequently? What do you recommend to do there?
Well, the first thing is we're not responsible for anyone else's emotional response. Secondly, if they're not, it's a tenuous position unless they want to have help in that situation to come to emotional intelligence. If yes, then meet them where they are without judgment and just try a simple little technique. And often the best thing in that situation is to simply state where you are with this, is that you're to let them know how the emotional reactivity is affecting you without judgment, and then give a specific example. But if they're not willing, there's really nothing you can do except avoid the situation or create boundaries for what you will be willing to tolerate or deal with.
Lama Gili decía, le preguntaba cómo trabajar con alguien que se enoja mucho, ¿no? Cómo él piensa trabajar con alguien. Y Erickson decía que en realidad lo principal es que la otra persona tiene que querer trabajar, ¿no? Este es el punto principal. Que si uno quiere hay formas, uno puede trabajar y transformar y ayudarlo a explorar las emociones, pero lo principal es que tenga ganas de trabajar, y si no hay que crear como límites, ¿no? Y intentar evitar las situaciones así que queden así. Yes, Luis has the hand raised up. Luis, ¿querés?
Hi. Thank you for the teaching. It's very good. It's first a comment. I don't know if the way to working from top to down, it was counterintuitive, but I think I don't know, it's different from other things. And I don't know, I like it very much. Thank you. And the question is, if you can I don't know, put another example of how to transmute emotions, especially anger. In my case, it's a thing I have to work with myself. Thank you. ¿Quiere que traduzca el tema o...?
Yo traduzco al final, si quieren. Traduzco al final, dejamos que responda Erickson y después traduzco. Yes, Erickson, please.
The first thing to notice with anger is to, again, with all of this, is simply to come to awareness that there's anger in my sphere right now, to really be attentive to what is arising in my experience. From that, just begin to pull the energy back, because we typically either with anger is really interesting, because if we look at the undistorted anger, it's the clarity, there's a sharp clarity and wisdom. So if you're angry, you're very clear about what you're angry about or to whom you are angry towards. With that, go ahead.
No, please.
Okay. With that, in really realizing that, then pull back from that trigger. Pull the energy back from the external object and really get in touch with how the energy feels. And that's usually anger is a really uncomfortable space to be. But if you notice with it, if you sit with it, you notice how clear and sharp it is. And you will also feel it in your body. Just focus on where it is in the body and just attend to that feeling of that energy in the body. And lean into it until it feels really uncomfortable. Most people don't want to hear that, but when you really lean into the uncomfort of that energy and just sit with it, knowing that it can't hurt you, you're just witnessing an experience that you feel. And the more capacity you create to do that, the faster the energy begins to just simply release itself into your field of consciousness. It unfolds itself, because really all of these energies want is just for us to be aware of them and get out of their way and let them flow through us without either burying it or projecting it somewhere else.
Le preguntó Luis cómo hacer para trabajar con la ira, ¿no? Como un ejemplo más sobre la ira, puntualmente. Le comentó que le parecía interesante este esquema de hacerlo de arriba hacia abajo. Y entonces decía, ¿cómo transformar la ira? Y lo que le decía Erickson es que esencialmente lo principal es mantenerse, ¿no? con la emoción, sentir la emoción. O sea, la emoción es muy clara, es muy cristalina, es muy afilada, pero es muy poco confortable, ¿no? Es muy poco... no se siente mal con eso. Entonces, en el momento, es horrible lo que dice, como es la forma, pero hay que relajarse en ese sentirse mal. Hay que dejar que esto fluya. Y una vez que esto pasó, una vez que uno dejó que la situación fluya y se genera así, gana más capacidad para que la energía solamente esté ahí. Porque la energía lo que quiere en general es ser reconocida. Entonces, si uno la puede sostener sin dejarla ir, pero tampoco sin reprimirla, va a ganar más capacidad de transformación.
And I just had a good example of that. I just spilled my beverage all over the place into electronics, and I'm sitting here with my anger right now because I would like to punch something, but realizing that this simply is what it is.
Dice, tengo un buen ejemplo porque acabo de tirarme líquido en todas mis cosas electrónicas y quiero golpearme, pero sé lo que es. Ya está. It happens, yes. It's like one time, as like a small story, there was this lady who came late to an empowerment and essentially started to bang on the door and make a fuss in the middle of empowerment. And I was the unce at the empowerment. I was sitting there, and she was saying to everyone, "Hey, wait! Just because I'm like half an hour late, this is." I was like there, and everyone was looking at me. I was like, "I must not kill her. I must not kill her. I must not kill her." This is a basic sitting with that. It's pretty good. Yes, Scott, please.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to comment that when I do this kind of work with other people, that feeling of you're basically pulling focus back so that you have a space around the anger or the fear or whatever, so that you are recognizing that you have an anger rather than that the anger is you.
Yes, very
right?
important.
And once you can do that, and once you can see that, then you can do the second movement, which is to feel the anger, where it is in your body, how it feels in your body, how to do that, and you can ride it and watch it dissolve. But there are some things that are just going to be so intense that you're captured in the moment. But like this whole work is about getting to the point where you can make that space, recognize the emotion that you have, rather than the emotion being your full field of view.
Yeah.
So
excellent insights. And for a basic overview, Scott, I think you make a great point. There are ways that if people wanted to go further into this work, that we can take each one of these emotions and bring them up in your field of awareness, and then begin to modulate them back and forth, so you can begin to feel the contour of that space and how the energies work themselves out. So if there's interest in the future, maybe that'll be something we could do.
Scott decía que en el trabajo que él tiene es importante poder tomar distancia, ¿no? De pasar de yo soy la emoción, yo soy enojado, yo vivo enojado, a yo siento enojo. Y el punto ese de acercarse, por supuesto, hay veces que es demasiado intenso y no queda capturado. Pero ese es el trabajo que hace esa cierta toma de distancia. Y lo que decía Erickson ahí, está bueno a veces, ¿no? En el futuro podemos hablar un poco más de esto, para empezar a aprender a modular, ¿no? La cercanía, para que uno sienta como los contornos de la emoción, por así decirlo, y así aprender a manejarlas. Excellent. Anyone else?
Yeah. Erickson, great presentation. Absolutely loved it. I think one of the most valuable things to me was getting to see that the various methods or the various levels we can approach our anger in these as framed in the Buddhist path, depending on the Buddhist vehicle potentially we're practicing or wanting to practice. I think that was very valuable to me, because I think I struggle the most right now a lot of the times in my anger is when something like this comes up, or with any of the poisons, when something comes up, I'm actually battling in myself the method I'm using to deal with it. Because, and this is where it leads to a question I'm interested in your perspective, is in your experience, do you find that there's times it's more useful or it's more practical to use one of these methods in order to solve the problem or to see the wisdom in the poison than not, and just sort of speak to that a little bit? Because for me, I think I do find that depending on what I'm angry about, maybe I still need to have a productive action. I see the clarity, like the anger leads to a clarity, and that clarity is something that needs to be acted on. It's not just a clarity of someone has insulted an idea about myself that doesn't exist because I don't really exist, and so I shouldn't take it so seriously. But if it's like, oh, climate change is real, or so something like, I need to not be apathetic to fight the apathy. It needs to go forward. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about that.
Really interesting points, and thanks for bringing it up. I think I'm going to speak to the last, and what, using climate change or something like that. There was a talk with Andrew Harvey, and basically the point of it is, for working with those things that we don't think that we have control over and want to get involved, find the one that murders your heart, that tears it wide open, and focus on it only. Because we can't save the world and all of its problems. But if you can find one that really, really, really moves you, pour all of your energy into it. And because most of us get lost in, I don't know what to do, so we do nothing. Find one small thing you can do and do it. I'll let Lama Fede translate.
Beautiful.
Decía, ahí lo que preguntaba Nama Josh es, le gustó mucho la charla, pero cómo uno puede también trabajar con esto sin dejar que esto se vuelva una cuestión de apatía, ¿no? Que no sea una cuestión de yo no voy a reaccionar frente a nada, sino que también uno a veces necesita usar las emociones. Y lo que le decía a Erickson es que lo que él aconseja es buscar, por ejemplo, con el ejemplo del cambio climático, buscar un punto en el cual a uno lo mueva, porque no podemos solucionar todo, pero podemos trabajar en un punto. Y ese punto comprometernos y trabajarlo.
As for your first question, I'm just going to be really candidly honest. If I've had a really rough day and something comes up, I'm like a little kid. So usually I need to take and pull myself away from the situation until I can gain some clarity. But what I love about any of these methods is they can meet you where you are. It's just simply the trick of figuring out where am I at right now and what's going to work best. And I just love having, especially within the arts, it's just like I got 4 levels and I just plug myself in. And if it doesn't work, then I just go down to the next one. So start with the easiest one. Like I say the easiest as if the Dzogchen is the easiest thing. But if I can just in a moment of clarity, let it go and be, I have to do nothing. But then otherwise I just work down the levels. And it just provides an easy gateway for me to access. And then afterwards I do a little debrief of what was this really trying to tell me? Is there something that I can see here that shows me that this is a habitual pattern? It's something that needs some work on, or it's just something that I got hooked on in the moment, and that's all there was to it. It's just something, and I never meet myself with judgment. It's always curiosity and playfulness.
Entonces, lo que decía ahí es que para él lo que le parece que es interesante es que uno en ese sentido no tiene que llegar a una cuestión de apatía, no, sino que el sistema de arts tener 4 niveles, ¿no? Nos permite como encontrarnos en el que estamos. Y en ese nivel estamos, bueno, vamos uno más abajo, pero siempre de alguna manera uno busca solucionarlo de la forma más simple posible. Si bien Dzogchen obviamente no es simple, digamos, simple aplicar en cualquier caso no es fácil de practicar. Pero esto nos permite encontrar en qué nivel estamos y responder a ese nivel. Also, Tara asked, if you're doing things right, awareness shouldn't really turn to apathy, should it?
It's a good question. I'm not going to say should never, because every time I say something shouldn't, then it surprises me. I think the biggest thing with apathy or ignorance is it's the trickiest. It's the fundamental state that we get stuck in that all the rest of the afflictive emotions arise from. So I'm going to give it its own little playpen and say that with ignorance and apathy, I get really, really curious and I go in like a mad scientist and just play with it and look at it.
Está la pregunta si haciendo bien las cosas no tendría que generar apatía y lo que dice Erickson es difícil, porque a veces la apatía está muy difícil decir no debería, ¿no? Porque de la apatía y de la ignorancia surge todo el resto. Con lo cual, lo que él hace cuando siente apatía para él te genera mucha curiosidad, ¿no? Porque implica que hay algo que es como bien muy claro en la respuesta que necesita investigar.
Because I think at the end of it, here's the thing. If we can eradicate the root of ignorance and apathy, we're Buddhas, no more work. Yay!
Porque si después podemos sacar la raíz de la ignorancia y la apatía, ya somos Budas y está. Lo hemos logrado. Excellent. Any other questions? No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Erickson. We have to continue this series for the next Nirvana Overdrive. It's a wonderful series. It's cool. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. And if you can, then I have the PPT. Would you like to share it later, or should we post just the list of emotions?
You can post the whole thing.
Y ahora después si quieren compartimos todo esto. Thank you so much. So, Lama Jile, would you like to lead us in the recitation of Prajna Paramita Sutram?
Sure, Lama. Let's see I will try to share the slides.
Perfecto.
So
Y ahora la
this is-
Magini nos va a guiar en la recitación del Prajna Paramita Sutra.
First, I will offer prostration to the Guru, the master of the translation of the Prajaparamita.
Primero hacemos demostraciones del Guru.
So this is the short stotram. I translated a couple of lines to share with everybody, but I heavily relied on Lama Fede's translation to understand my own path through this.
Esto en realidad ella va a compartir unas líneas de un elogio de Prajna Paramita, que es el Prajna Paramita Sutra, pero se basó mucho en una traducción que hice yo para entender cómo ella lo interpretaba.
So I'll sing the couple of lines to give you a sense of the style.
Entonces va primero a cantarlas para transmitir un poco el estilo.
The first is like this. Iti prajna paramita stotram. I translated that to say, we sing the perfection of wisdom. Part of that choice is it's a very active declaration. So it has the present aorist, perpetual, declarative, and affirmative cases. So it's really like a point in time that is continuous. So I really leaned heavy to that.
En la primera línea, esencialmente, ella lo tradujo como yo canto el Prajna, nosotros cantamos el Prajna Paramita, lo puso con una perspectiva como una afirmación.
But once I saw Lama Fede's translation, the chant of the Prajna Paramita, I immediately started envisioning all of the monks together in their perfect choir. So I was like, forget it, we must rely on the Guru in this line.
Sí, pero en esta línea puntualmente ella prefirió después la traducción que yo le pasé, que esencialmente es la acción de el cantar la Prajna Paramita, que no es tanto una persona que la afirma, sino que es como un canto que continúa a lo largo de, ella dice, todos los monjes, ¿no?, que cantan la Prajna Paramita.
The next is an obeisance and a praise. It says, Om Namah Shri Prajna Paramitaye. The last suffix marker is the vocative case calling to. I saw that Lama Fede in that translation kept it perfectly. He didn't move it from its original language. So you can say that as it is, as our consciousness perceives, is perfect.
En esta, la segunda línea, o una más Prajna Paramitae, esencialmente yo la mantuve en el mismo lenguaje que estaba. Esta parte la van a reconocer, y yo la dejé en esa manera.
But I decided to move ahead with my line, which says, honor to the noble goddess, the perfection of wisdom. In this line, Shri Prajna Paramita, Shri says, particularly it has a long history of being personified as its own goddess in the Shri Yantra, the goddess Shri. So I just used the word goddess from this sense, although that might not be very typical.
Sí, pero ella lo tradujo como honor a la noble diosa, la perfección de sabiduría. ¿Por qué? Porque utilizó el término Shri. Shri es un término que es muy interesante, muy complejo, viene de un yantra que llaman Shri Yantra, que está considerado como el yantra principal de todas las diosas indias. Entonces, por eso lo transformó en diosa, si bien entiende que esta traducción de diosa no es una traducción, es una traducción polémica, por así decirlo.
The next line says, Bahurupa Tvamekai Nana Nama Bhiriksyase. So Lama Fede translate this, you alone are of many forms and are looked upon by various names. And initially I made a translation very similar, looking at the stems, the words, etc.
Sí, en la próxima línea yo traduje, tú sola eres de muchas formas y es comprendida por muchos nombres, ¿no? Entonces dice, la dama G le dice, yo en un principio la traduje así porque es lo que la traducción como más directa.
But after a few times of passing my eyes over the lines, I just realized Bahu Rup. Bahu is daughter-in-law. Rup is the form. Tvameka means you are, alone you are. So when I just, instead of idiomatically putting together the whole sense, when I just literally pieced apart those words, I thought, how radical. A Bahu is the person who's not often allowed to speak. They're absorbed into the youngest position in the family without power. So how radical is it to say that this swift savioress is actually also, she's in the form of the weakest person. She also comes in the form of the meek, silent daughter-in-law. How wonderful was that?
Dice, y por otro lado, dice, cuando lo puse a pensarlo, empecé a pensar un poquito las interacciones sociales de esta niña, ¿no? Entonces dice, Bahu es la mierda, no, la hija, o sea, la hija, la esposa del hijo, actualmente, ¿no? No me acuerdo cuál es el término exacto, pero sinceramente es, en la sociedad india es como la más, la persona con menos poder, ¿no? En una casa. Rupa es la forma, entonces lo que dice es que qué radical que es pensar que estoy utilizando el término de esta persona para la nuera. Gracias, Nico. Es la nuera. Es la nuera en la casa y la nuera generalmente es la persona con menos poder. Entonces lo que está diciendo acá es, lo que está diciendo esta niña es, hasta toma la forma de la nuera, ¿no? Hasta la nuera, que es la persona que es más silenciosa y como más sufrida, puede ser la salvadora.
Es muy interesante porque ella también tiene la forma de nuera y también tiene un millón de formas. And that's it's a really radical statement to say, this is the most powerful ultimate Buddha. She will also come in the form of a very meek and meager daughter-in-law. And I just thought, have we ever seen that ever on earth? I've never seen that in my life. It's interesting.
Dice, y es interesante porque dice, no solamente tiene esa forma, sino que tiene un millón de formas. Entonces, no solamente es la forma como se llama, de la nuera, sino que puede venir en un millón de formas y puede ser la forma de la salvadora.
The next line, this is line 24. Vamevatra sajanani balanam bhima dharshana. And I'll first say Lama Fede translates this. You are the one who causes terror to children and looks terrible.
Y la próxima es, yo la traduje como, sos la que causa terror a los niños, a las niñas, y parece que es aterrorizante.
This was probably one of the most interesting linguistic puzzles because I just thought to myself, I'm going to change the macron. So the macron are the diacritical markings on the word balanam to balanam. And actually, it's a complete semantical change, complete different word.
Acá tengo que explicar un poco qué es el macrón. Esencialmente el macrón, ven que sobre las A de balanam hay una lineita, eso en sánscrito, balanam y balanam son dos letras diferentes. Entonces lo que ahí hizo es, ella cambió decidió hacer un cambio y pasa de niñas a guerreros.
I took liberty to make that change, but I also comforted myself remembering that Buddhism is an oral tradition for many long kalpas without having been written. And so the sound of balanam to balanam sounds very similar. Budismo tenía tradición oral, no fue escrituras por millón de años.
Que como el budismo era una tradición principalmente oral, es un cambio muy pequeño, es algo que fácilmente podría haber existido, y porque balanam a balanam es casi igual.
So I made the semantical change because the theme of beam, which is speaking about might and raw strength and rough power, and bal, like Bal Paramita is like a strength and your actual force that you can punch through a wall, realizing that wall is empty. So you just put a finger and break a bone. So Bal and Beam are these kind of warrior terminologies. So Tras is terror. So when I just look at the sense of Balanam, I would translate this to say, you are the mother of dread, terrifying warriors with your frightening presence. So Trasa Janani means you're the source of dread. You are the birthplace of dread. And Balanam being the warriors, Darshana is your visage, your sight, and a beam is that might and like a warrior's kind of gaze of death. So I just kind of combined all of this into my sense package. And that's why I said, let me go for that change of the macron.
Lo que dice es, por ejemplo, entonces, ¿por qué lo cambió? Porque Beam tiene que ver con el poder, ¿no? El poder del guerrero. Darshan en este caso es como vista. Tras es terror, ¿no? Trasayani significa la fuente de todo terror. Entonces, tomando esta cuestión más como guerrera, ella entiende que ello puede ser un cambio, pero es un cambio que sería posible, y pasa de que asusta a las niñas a esencialmente tiene esta cuestión guerrera de poder y de miedo, ¿no? Es la fuente del terror.
Next line 25. Asvasa janani chapi vidu samsomya dharshana. First Lama Fide's translation. You are also a source of comfort to the learned and a gentle sight. And that actually makes a lot of sense. So it was obvious to me that through my translation, it was very similar to Lama Fide's.
Dice, entonces la próxima línea yo la traduje como, pero él es también la fuente del confort a quienes te conocen y un suspiro gentil, ¿no? Lo cual no se relaja. Y su traducción a la primera fue muy similar.
But then, as it happens, a few passes into the line, I again did this same trick about just breaking off the words in a sandhi, which is the word break. And then when you look at the words individually, they give a little bit of a different sense.
Dice, pero después de haberlo pasado varias veces y haberlo repetido varias veces, empezó a probar esto de romper las palabras en el sandhi. El sandhi es la unión de las palabras, ¿no? En el sánscrito. Y cuando los ve, las partículas de las palabras, la etimología de las palabras, le da un sentido diferente.
And that's when I came to see you are the source of the wind horse, and the wise see your pacifying appearance. So the source of the wind horse says Asvajanani. So the Ashwins, these mighty twins that are horse-faced in the sky, and so the winds, mother of the winds. There's a lot of ways to really read that first phrase, but in all cases, praise to the one who can raise the wind horse kind of is linked with this concept that Mother Tara can really have control and effect over the domain of the winds.
Entonces, ahí lo que hizo es, tomó separado primero Ashvashnani. Los Ashvins son una especie de gemelos divinos que tienen cara de caballo y cabalgan por los cielos. Entonces, de esa forma transformó a eso en la fuente que es la madre o la fuente del caballo de viento, es decir, del prado.
The next line, 46. This was probably the best thing that I translated because I learned so much about how I think in this way.
Sí, y esta es la que más me gustó traducir porque se dio cuenta tanto como ella piensa viendo esta línea.
I learned that I basically overthink and overcomplicate things, and it's needless. I translated this as, we praise the goddess of infinite radiance, you who have accomplished the perfection of wisdom.
Ella se le parece que por ahí a veces sobreelabora las cosas. Dice, ella tradujo como, elogiamos a la diosa cuya radiación infinita ha conseguido toda la perfección de la sabiduría.
For those who are not necessarily familiar with Sanskrit, the words give a very justifiable reading for that. Samaptam says it's accomplished. Kritam says it's doing. And then it says, the Prajnaparamitam Stotram, so this is the perfection of wisdom praise. The problem is, all of those added together, when I saw Lama Fede's simplicity and I realized Sri Laksha Bhagavati was a person, I just said the Lama is great, so praise be.
Eso, si uno lo piensa así, uno lo puede llegar a pensar, ¿no? Porque para que aparecen sobran soliloquios, ahorita mes haciendo zapates logrados. Pero el tema es que lo que decía es que yo entendí, sé que Sri Lakshmi Bhagavati es una persona. Entonces, la relación queda mucho más simple.
So, important. This was my translation, but I really couldn't have done any of this without Lama Fede. I compared my notes. I learned from his words. So the guru is Satya, the guru is Jyoti, the guru is Amritam. Asatama Tasamaya, Tamasama Jyotirgamaya, Mritirma Amritam. This is Bhakti Yoga. We always rely on the guru for everything. Thank you, Guru. Thank you, Kula.
Dice que por eso, pero esto le sirvió mucho para compartir y por eso conseguí es cercano. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much, Baba Chile.
Thank you. Any questions, anybody?
¿Dudas, consultas, preguntas? Well, I have actually a question, to be honest. As we went through this process back and forth, I think that those changes you made were great. How much do you think it's this was the beginning of this kind of readings between Mahayana and Bhakti?
Can you state the last part? How much of
of these changes, this change in interpretation? Because you raise a very good point. The point being the point that this is an oral tradition, right? And especially well sung, and especially when you take into account that they didn't song in Vedic Sanskrit, they sung in Prakrit, right? And it's a Prakrit after all. So when you basically got the transmission, every single way, there probably were some drifts, right? How likely do you think that this kind of different approaches, more poetic approaches like yours, were the beginning of the true Mahayana?
Lama, that's a very interesting and complex question. On the one hand, even in myself, if I were to make a divergence from, as you guys can only know, there's going to be dozens of translations of these praises. What I've seen in my research, not particularly this time, but various other times, is that maybe 99% of them are almost identical with very small divergence. And even though I've diverged a few times and justifiably picked apart the text, I still had to say the guru was right. My devotion won't allow me to move so many standard deviations outside of the guru's shadow, because I don't have the same insight. That's why you are my teacher and my guru. But if I do something that's right, then it's the guru's blessing that's allowed me to do that. But I don't think people had the sense to just pave their own way. No. How can they be within bhakti devotion and think they were going to do that? Interdependence means my guru's blessing is what is giving me this sight. The lineage is within me. The sangha is with me. So I think it's very hard to maybe pave your own path. That's very tricky, Lama.
Thank you. Okay. Yo le preguntaba esencialmente cuánto ella piensa que esto puede haber surgido como una especie de Mahayana. Me decía que no, que si uno sigue el gurú, claramente el nivel de diferencia va a ser mínimo, ¿no? Por algo uno está haciendo, que si uno se fija en los diferentes traducciones que hubo, el 99%, digamos, de los casos caía como muy cercano, caían muy cercanos. Oh, and Damashera is here. Hello, Damashera.
Hey, my friends. How's it going?
Everything all right. Everything all right, Damashera. New haircut. New haircut.
Oh, no.
sorry. That's just come over differently. But
yes, it's the way the light is playing because I don't have a light on in the room. I'm using natural light, and it's playing with the background, so I have this weird halo head.
Your holiness is shining through, Damashera. Thank you. So, yes, Erickson, please.
I found it interesting, Lama Jili, in your two things. In playing with the Ashwini, and when I think of the Ashwini, I think of the two horse brothers as physicians, but I'd never made a connection to wind horse energy. So I thought that you teasing that out was a really interesting distinction. Is there anything more you'd like to say about that?
Teasing out lines and playing with them is one of my favorite games. The only risk that I run is getting it completely wrong. Thank God for the gurus being here with me. But if the Ashwinis are involved and we know that they're a nakshatra and as well as astrological phenomena, then I would like to, if anything, kind of research and cross-reference the nakshatra and Jyotisha relative to Mother Tara's effect as a Buddha beyond the Kundli. When I think about Kundli and the Vedic astrology chart, I think the Buddha is one who has an empty Kundli, right? Beyond karma and the cause of the graha, or has every constellation in every position at every minute. So the Ashwinis being involved just puts a data point for further research one day on what these implications were written. Because of course, even though we know what is time and space, the problem is we do celebrate particular holidays across the year and special feast days, and those are of great astrological significance. So just a thought. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. And then the other thought that I had too is what I found really interesting is kind of the transversive or transgressive nature of and I'm going to use this, please take it in the spirit, the divine feminine, about how it transgresses against our standards. And when you were talking about the lowly mother-in-law or daughter-in-law, I thought from I can't use my tongue today, from the Christian tradition of the first Marian hymn of the Magnificat, where Mary is talking and is like, she says, he's shown the strength of his great arm, scattering the proud in their conceit, casting down the mighty from their thrones and lifting up the humble, filling the hungry with good things and the rich being sent away empty. And I just caught that kind of Sophia strain of like that female embodiment of wisdom upturns everything. And I just thought that was a really interesting cross-cultural comparison for whatever that's worth.
I think anybody who looks or has come from a tradition of lacking a proud symbol for the divine feminine, or who never had experienced women being an equal player in any dimension, this would just radically overturn all things. Like, it's the only problem we run with this, and I'll tell everybody this freely, is the grasping to the body, grasping to sex, and grasping to gender. And that is something I think we all have to face as well as transcend. So even though I come from, 20,000 feminists who want equal rights, they don't want to have female infanticide, they don't want to be human trafficked. So that's a great background, but there's also boys who are feeling those ways. There's also boys who are being trafficked. The problem is humanity has these problems whereupon once we examine closely, we see that it's happening to all sexes, all genders, expressions. And so to have preference for one and to abandon the other is not the pathway for bodhisattvas. So even I cannot really keep close to me this concept like the body. The masters, the Mahasiddhas, they leave the body, go into someone else's body, come back, change genders, don't feel like dying, they'll probably just poa their way into another body, finish their translations, die after that. The body is so empty that the masters show there wasn't anything to the body. They might die, hang out in dreamlands forever, reborn again. It's just, they just play with the concept of the body, showing us that the body's a concept, just a concept that arises. So I love the ideas that proudly present all beings nature, that we can take power, bal, and change this world and show compassion and bring things to the needy and transform the place. That should be everybody's gift. But I shy away when I hear the sex is too fixed, because the Buddha Avalokiteshvara manifested as a female, manifested as a male. There was no limits for the sexed body because the body was empty. Even if we don't know that, we can still historically see the Buddha Guanyin had two forms, and other Buddhas don't even have a sex in their Buddha realm. They're just a being. They don't necessarily have genitals. So I shy away from the dimension called divine feminine or even divine masculine, because those two gender binaries, they don't really have a place in our Buddha Dharma when we come to the middle way, right? And so thank you for bringing it up, Erickson, because that's a powerful one. You know, we all live in our bodies. So we are all doing what we do within these bodies. And it's very hard to kind of have a freedom from that. But I think we're all getting there slowly, slowly. So thank you again.
Déjame traducir brevemente. Esencialmente lo que hizo es, dice dos preguntas, Erickson. La primera sobre el tema de los nakshatras y cómo Namachili hizo la relación con los nakshatras, con los vientos. Y ahí hubo una explicación media larga, después si quieren repartimos, pero que sinceramente los nakshatras no son solamente las figuras míticas, sino que también, perdón, los ashwin no son solamente las figuras míticas, sino que son nakshatras, son las naciones de la luna, y eso tiene que ver con la forma que astrológicamente se puede tener el Buda como bajo en todo tipo de Kata Yotish, ¿no? Eso, si quieren, después lo repasamos un poquito más largo. La segunda era sobre el tema de Erickson decía de este lugar de la nuera, como esta cuestión del divino femenino, y la mayoría dice sí, totalmente sí, pero es importante no apegarse tampoco a la idea de género como que hay como un divino femenino, ¿no? Que una cuestión que es intrínsecamente divina, sino que esta idea de género también, y de biología, y de dos géneros, también es vacua, ¿no? En el sentido de que los budas y bodhisattvas y mahasiddhas iban cambiando de uno a otro. Perdón, hago un mini resumen, pero después si quieren lo seguimos. Luis.
Hi, Lamayeli, thank you for the teaching. And I have a question about the relationship between this text and Tara, because some of the lines sounded a little like praises to Tara. So I was a little confused. So I don't know if you can talk about this relationship, please. Thank you.
I think the language is the same because it's the language of devotion, and the masters who have compiled this were effortlessly always in Rigpa and using conventional language of the relative. They wrote the things that would have been like a song to them sung by the Dakinis. It's not from this same place.
Dice, le pregunta a Luis porque le hace pensar en los Setara, y lo que le dice son, porque son tan similares, la mayoría le dice, porque también el lenguaje es el lenguaje de la devoción, ¿no? Ese lenguaje se utilizaba, y los maestros que lo reciben en Rigpa, probable que también, ¿no? Reciben de las Daikinis de una manera similar de manejar. Thank you so much. Any other question? Any other comment? ¿Alguna otra consulta, duda?
One comment, and that is, Lama Julie, thank you so much for the, I don't know, for this whole experience. I think one I'd love for you to talk a little bit is how your experience of translation, feeds your practice, and how that reflects your practice and understanding of the teachings of Bhagavaparamita and emptiness and sort of anything else that you're doing. I think that's one part. And then second is just really a comment on, I do love your comment on how when Lama Fede asked you about, deviations in the translation and your take on the fact that, there aren't so many deviations from your analysis. And in a sense, personally, it's related to how can one deviate so much from what the guru teaches in this way and that level of devotion. And I also wanted to share a bit of how I interpret that, both in like the one-sided way of the devotion to the guru, but also understanding that like on a relative practical way, your teacher should be showing a great example of how to be with beings and how to be in community and to be a river of compassion to all people. So I think it does make sense internally, consistently, that there is so much continuity between these translations because it comes from a source that actually practically delivers compassion to beings. And rather than, I don't know, sometimes growing up in like a very Christian way, thinking like, oh, this thing hasn't changed in a long, long time. You kind of think, oh, because someone's forcing it not to change a certain way. And there's this tension to change. But I think it is different in the Buddha Dharma in many ways when we have these, when we talk about the guru, when we talk about devotion, when we talk about communities in compassion that are benefiting other beings. I think, even Charles Darwin said that ultimately individuals in species will go to cooperation because cooperation is a more effective strategy to survive long term rather than just fighting all the time in later of his works. So it's even from a naturalistic standpoint, one could say we tend towards bodhisattvaness, which is which I just wanted to highlight. And I think you said perfectly in that statement, and I saw it so clearly. So thank you, Lama Jilly.
Well, first I can tell everybody that a little bit of what I do, I'm a PhD student, so a lot of my time is wasted on Instagram, social media. But when I do my practices or when I translate, I feel like I enter into a completely different space. And first, I have to cleanse my eyes because I'm looking at the guru. The Prajna Paramita is not separate from the guru. And then we don't eat or drink, we focus with single point. So when I come to the translation, it's probably the better part of the practices that I can do because it's not even the same mind state space. And then I compile these vast glosses that are more like word maps because a word changes so much over time. So I just end up building these things. And then I will look at the mythology that I've heard of words like the Ashwin twins. They are the ones who gave Nakul and Sadev, the Pandu brothers. So I will look at the mythological links to words across various languages, sometimes Chinese too, and then bring it back to the translation. So it ends up being way weirder than it was supposed to be. So that's why I think it's a craziness. But the first thing is that the Prajna Paramitam is inseparate from the gurus. So when I come there, it's like close all the doors in the house, nobody, no phone. It's just single pointed focus. And it ends up being that I can feel the guru with me because the guru is one with the Prajna Paramita. Thank you.
Ahí le preguntaba Lama Josh cómo su práctica de traductora se machea con la práctica, su práctica en sí. Y lo que decía Lama Gili es que sinceramente, bueno, ella lo que hace es empieza con la devoción al gurú, y después busca salva las palabras, busca encontrar los diferentes sentidos, busca después, por ejemplo, las asociaciones mitológicas, ¿no? De todo esto en chino, en otros idiomas, en sánscrito, en todos idiomas que pueda, y después vuelve al lugar de devoción, porque en realidad guru y paramita son lo mismo. Entonces, eso le permite de alguna forma también transformarlo en guru yoga la traducción, teniendo que el guru y la deidad es lo mismo. Esencialmente, hacer la traducción se transforma en guru. Thank you so much, Ramajit. Muchas gracias. Any other question? ¿Alguna otra consulta? If not, let me tell you that we haven't spoken with Lama Jili, but it's very much in line with Lama Jili and with Erickson. Though I haven't told them what was my deck. I think the only person I have told, I think, is Lama Shara, right? What was my deck? But essentially, my presentation is going to be pretty much in language. Digo, esto, si quieren, pasamos a la presentación. Y si bien la única persona que la compartí es la Mayera, van a ver que mi presentación tiene mucho que ver con esto, con lo que ellas venían haciendo. So, this started a couple of days back, right? Well, this started like a long time ago, but the particular idea of this presentation started like a couple of days back. So, like, I was I was working with social media, we were discussing things, and I saw a post about someone who, well, Shantang, why involve them? Someone who's kind of known saying, Buddhism in the end it's a technology, but Rihanna, and it's essentially humanism, and if you're like this capitalistic human who basically keeps his body healthy and so on, and kind of respects the power of the divine feminine and things like this is the path of Buddhism. To which I say, fuck off. Not at all, right? Entonces, esto tiene que ver porque hace un par de días yo vi una posteo de alguien que conocemos todos que estaba diciendo que el budismo es semi-humanismo, ¿no? Es un humanismo capitalista de cuidar del cuerpo. Y yo decía, pero eso, no, eso es una pelotudez, perdón por el término. No. So, in that sense, I want to offer you a kind of question, a kind of practice that we can try to do, which taking it from a feminist movement, I'll call Zen-Buddhism. It's not my term, or rather, this Zen-Buddhism, yes, but the Zen part, no. But let me explain a little bit of what it is. Para eso quiero mostrarles un poquito de esta propuesta que voy a tirar, que se llama Zen-Buddhism. So there is one underlying question, right, which I want to pose it to you, which has to do with bodies and has to do with humanity. The first thing I want to question is whether our bodies are a reality, right? Are there something that is real and natural? And we usually tend to think of ourselves as human based on a biological basis, right? We have all these kind of species mapped out, like human and different types of mammal and reptiles and so on. But my first question is, what if humanity is a performance? Entonces, mi primera pregunta y la pregunta que sustiene todo esto esencialmente es problematizar el tema de la humanidad y los cuerpos. Tendemos a pensar que la humanidad es una cuestión biológica, ¿no? Que somos Homo sapiens, que hay mamíferos, insectos, esas cosas, pero yo lo que pregunto es, ¿qué pasa si la humanidad es una performance? So, this is something that it's not really that controversial, or it shouldn't be, because at this point it's kind of well developed, but still some people kind of find this strange, right? But what happens if you have a biological human child that gets born in a feral family? What you have is an animal that actually cannot walk by itself. Feral children struggle to. Sadly, there has been a couple of cases. So there's nothing natural in what we have when we was humans. Lo que pasa si uno nace con un niño que nace fuera de la sociedad, transforma un animal que ni siquiera puede caminar por sí mismo. No pueden caminar. No hay nada natural en lo que hacemos como humanos. And yet, let's take Erickson's dictum, right, of the room. Let's become aware of what we do every single day. I work with computers. We get out of our houses. We cross streets. And there's nothing natural about it. Absolutely nothing. The way that the cars move, the way that they cross when the lights on, the way that the elevator, what's this? This natural than the elevator. And yet we do it every single day. Lo pensemos cuando salimos, trabajamos con computadoras, cuando cruzamos nuestras calles, cuando tomamos un ascensor. No hay nada natural. ¿Qué es menos natural que un ascensor? Pero lo hacemos todos los días. Even our bodies are the result of learning what a body is. It's not something that we gain automatically, but it's something that is learned through repetition and through interaction with others, right? With the mother and the father and all the rest of the others. This idea of who we are, it's a performance. There's nothing really there. The bodies are nothing but a mental impression. They're dreamlike, so to speak, right? That is why I take also Lamagil's, both Erickson and Lamagil's point, right? That the bodies, there's no, in the end, like divine feminine. Yes, of course, it's very important in the relative, when there is a misogynistic system, to emphasize female people that identify as female in positions of power, because it's an antidote, as Erickson would say, right, to the situation of this. But we're not saying that they're inherently or naturally divine. They're as empty as all the rest. Entonces, lo que quiero decir es que por eso el cuerpo mismo es una mentira, es algo que aprendemos. Y por eso yo digo, tomando el punto de la Magili, que en realidad no hay un divino femenino. Sí es importante en lo relativo empezar por lo femenino cuando hay una sociedad que es machista, porque eso es un antídoto, como diría Erickson, a la situación que hay. Pero no es que inherentemente la mujer es divina, de más forma que el hombre es divino, son todos bajos. So if we are a performance, we could ask, then what are the Buddhas, right? Because the first thing that we should understand is that Buddhas, at least according to Buddhism themselves, to the text themselves, they are not human. This idea of the Buddha as the ultimate human, which tends to cast him in a, let's say, a kind of neoliberal person who basically is very serene, is very beautiful, and always try to have consensus and everything, ignores not only the experience of Buddhists right now, but ignores the same texts that describe the Buddha, whereas the Buddha is described half the time cursing people, having a very dry, a very dark sense of humor, and essentially not producing karma. That's one of the main definitions of the Buddha. They don't produce karma anymore, so they're not humans. Yes, exactly. Tara was saying that Tara's voice, saying enlightenment, wasn't to say enlightenment, was feminine. Yes, that in this society there is a need to have feminine figures of enlightenment. Yes, that we should start by emphasizing feminine. Yes, but we also, one of the problems is that's the problem of the TERF movement, right? That we tend to biologicize or naturalize, and again, reify gender essentialism. And then we confuse biology with gender, so to speak. So that's why Tara's bow arose. Yes, exactly, Leah. Just as I was saying, exactly. This is the problem. When you kind of become like, this is the woman, and this, you kind of become trapped. So because I don't want to fall in this, I call this xenobuddhism. You're not human. We're not talking about humans, right? We're not being transhumans. We're just not talking about humans at all. Entonces decía, y los budas tampoco son humanos, ¿no? Porque los budas, de alguna forma, pensar que los budas son humanos, esta cuestión neoliberal que el Buda es amable y charla y simpático, un tipo simpático, ignora no solamente la experiencia budista, sino los textos budistas del Buda no produce karma. Y se la pasa insultando a todo el mundo y se la pasa peleándose con medio mundo. Es un error de lectura muy grande. Thank you, Leah. Yes, I think that we're in the same wavelength, which is why we are all here, right? So, what is Buddhahood if the Buddhas are not human? And we are, right? Or we identify as, what is Buddhahood? Well, Buddhahood, I think it's kind of a machine. And I'm very specific saying here machine. I'm not talking about a person. That's why the Tathagatas are called the Tathagatas, right? It's more of a machine. It's a device for enlightenment, for liberation. Entonces, ¿qué son los Budas? ¿Qué es la budidad en ese sentido? Si los Budas no son humanos. Para mí la budidad es, y quiero ser muy preciso aquí, es un sistema maquínico. Es una maquinaria que genera liberación. Oh yes, yeah. Chakravartin is essentially a very. It's like for me, it's almost like the Emperor in Warhammer 40K, right? In some ways, it is so exaggerated that wraps around to being funny. It's very much like this. Also, one thing I very much I always love about Warhammer 40K is that they have really one thing I would say is important that the Emperor is clearly Turkish. With all the Roman and Nordic images there, the father of Minecraft is a Turkish guy from the Iron Age. It's wonderful. Y acá me decía que los Budas y el Chakrabarti son raros. Sí, son raros. Digo, para mí es como el emperador de Warhammer, ¿no? Que es un tipo turco que vive ahí y es tan bizarramente intenso que se vuelve a transformar en ¿cómo se llama? En gracioso. Yes, la magia.
Well, going on the history of the modern Turkish Empire, Kemal Mustafa Ataturk was shot right in the chest. The bullet hit his pocket watch. He flew off his horse and he didn't die. So that's a legend.
That is some Chakrabarti stuff right there. O sea, que Ataturk, por ejemplo, que el fundador del Estado turco, le pega un tiro en el corazón y le pegó en el reloj. Y siguió cargando. Así que sí, claramente es Chakrabarti. So how this machine works, right? This machine works for me in 3 main steps. The first of one is that, especially in the Mahayana, right? We're talking about Mahayana perception here mostly. The idea is that you paradoxically remain in the world by being dead, right? It's kind of it's a little interesting movement because you basically give up the main thing that the world instills, which is to look out for number one, and you put the focus on to the others. There is nothing there that can be harnessed by samsara. So you have to die in samsara in a way to be rewarded. Let me just say that I'm talking in metaphorical terms. Please do not commit suicide under any circumstances. Primera parte, yo lo veo en 3 movimientos. La primera parte es morir para el mundo para renacer, ¿no? En ese sentido. Como uno cambia hacia una inversión de samsara, pasa a preocuparse más por el otro que por uno mismo. ¿Y por qué eso? Porque preocuparse por uno mismo solamente es lo que genera samsara. De alguna forma uno muere para samsara para poder generar. Quiero aclarar que en esto estoy diciendo yo, por favor, no hay que morir literalmente, no estoy hablando, es una metáfora. No es The second thing is that after being reborn, when we are reborn, we are reborn in the body. We are bodies, right? What we think as I, the I, in the sense of a psychic structure, essentially is tied up to a body. And this is something that is explored very subtly, but very effective in the Surman style of Shamatha Lama Sherab Sukha lineages. Right? When our breath becomes air, the point where our breaths become air, that's the point where the I and the not I start to play. But this is not only happens with the basic things of the body, but essentially what this happens is that there is a lot of things that we understand as pleasurable and good for us and unpleasurable and disastrous for us. For example, I'm pretty sure that there's not a lot of practices, like probably in my position, but I don't think there's another going around where you have sex with spiders, right? And yet, who's to say that it's pleasurable or not, right? This is something that is so absolutely far away from most definitions of humankind that we tend to assume this label, unnatural. And yet, one could argue very effectively that what we are doing now, in my case, speaking from a microphone and screen, is more unnatural than having, sex with the spiders. So this is not as hard as a no, as don't kill yourself. I'm not saying don't have sex with spiders. My advice is just check if they're poisonous first, right? The first thing. Yes, intimacy with all things. Exactly. This is what I love Dogen. I love Shogenso. This is one of my main favorites. At some point, probably this is my limitation. I'm not teaching it because it's more of a sad thing, but I tell everyone who listens, go read the Shogenso. It's a wonderful Buddhist text. It's one of my favorites. Entonces decía, lo segundo es todas las cosas que nos invaden, ¿no? Cuando uno nace en un cuerpo, y es lo que llamo yo es un cuerpo. La respiración, esencialmente, es en la respiración, por ejemplo, el Surman que enseña la Mallera, se pierde un momento, la respiración se vuelve aire. Es el límite del cuerpo. Pero también hay límites que tomamos como sociedad, por ejemplo, el no tener sexo con arañas. Y uno podría decir, pero eso es una locura, pero también uno podría discutir que lo que hacemos ahora de hablar por internet es menos antinatural que tener sexo con arañas. Mi consejo acá es, si van a probarlo, simplemente chequen que no sean venenosas, ¿no? Punto para. But this, sorry, Lamaji, you have your hand raised.
No, I'm sorry, that's an accident.
No worry. So this brings me to my last point, to the main point of this, that in reality, there is absolutely nothing that is solid within this. What there is just waves of experience. So to speak. Even the experience of time itself is experience. And we are often, because how we perceive the world, are kind of growing in experience. The emotions, as Erickson would say, kind of grown us, right? Or the difference, the million forms of, like Lamajida would say, of fragment parameter can fragment us. But in reality, there's no difference between all those experiences and themselves, right? So the problem is that this fear of drowning is what keeps us from really experiencing everything as awareness, right? Everything as a play of role and yin, the play of the energies from breathing. Because we need to keep this idea that this is going to dissolve me into this ocean. Failing to understand that this me that we think is going to dissolve, it's already the same. It has the same nature, right? The body and the thoughts and everything else has the same dreamland nature. Y por eso yo digo que no nos podemos ahogar en el océano, porque nosotros somos parte de este océano de experiencias. Simplemente creamos este cuerpo para poder interactuar. Pero este cuerpo no es un cuerpo natural, no es una cosa sólida, sino que es parte de la misma naturaleza onírica que tiene el resto de los fenómenos. So, how should we go about it? How should we try to experience this particular aspect? ¿Cómo deberíamos practicar esto? So I have a small operational procedure, which we're not going to do because it's going to be long, and we can, if you like, do a separate session, just focus on this. But it's something I very much I would advise you to do. And this is especially good at practice for dream yoga. This is the way I started to learn dream yoga for a long time. Y entonces, yo no vamos a hacer las prácticas ahora, pero porque quería hacer una parte, si quieren la podemos hacer, pero es muy bueno para practicar si tenemos dream yoga, el yoga de los sueños, ¿no? So the main thing is that in either dream yoga or your meditation practice, you dissolve and re-arise in a form that is not your own. Now, the first thing we learn to do is how to re-arise as a Buddha, right? As a particular Buddha itself. But we also could arise, for example, in other forms, right? We could have our crystal form that you already know, probably, and then re-arise into something different. If you don't know how to do this, don't worry. At this point, just imagine that you rise, for example, as a spider, or as a snake, or as a storm, for example, right? As a sentient storm. Entonces, lo que hacemos ahí nos disolvemos y luego surgimos una forma. Si saben cómo surgir un Buda, puede surgir así, también puede surgir en una serpiente, como una araña, como una tormenta que es consciente. So imagine, take some time imagining, or in dream yoga, take some time feeling how it feels to be that body. What it feels to be that body. For example, how it feels to be a whale, right? swimming through the darkness of the ocean, trying to find something. It's a very different feeling, at least how I imagine it to be, that how it feels to be me right now, right? What do you mean, Lars, in the sense that we experience it in our own way, right? Right. We all experience it in different ways, right? Oh, no problem.
I was just referring to Louis. He said he sucked at it, and I said you don't. So it was not.
Don't worry, don't worry. I was like, yeah, we do. But yes, I agree, I agree. And we all experience dream yoga in our own way. Totally, 100%. Thank you. Sí, es uno, cada uno toma toma su propia forma. So once we do this, once we have this kind of different awareness, we start trying to integrate it, right? We start trying to integrate it in our practice, understanding that the limits that we create for ourselves are essentially what defines us as humans. They're not hard things. They're not things that they exist there and we're never going to be present. But we actually can. And we can start playing with those, trying to find why they are a little bit unreal, what they are a little bit dream. Y una vez que tenemos esto, empezamos a integrar esta experiencia en nuestra práctica. Darnos cuenta que el ser humano, esencialmente, es una costumbre. Y empezamos a darnos cuenta que la forma en que nosotros actuamos es onírica y es aprendida. And once we do this, once we can integrate this insight, we begin again the whole cycle. This is especially good if you practice in dream yoga or in a daily meditation just before you go to sleep, in order to cultivate a little bit of dreams, because this will day by day slowly start not so much eroding your humanity, but rather showing you that it's not something solid and fixed, right? Entonces, esto nos va a mover un poquito si practicamos antes de irnos a dormir o en el yoga de los sueños, nos va a poquito empezar a mostrarnos que la humanidad no es sólida, sino que es algo que se puede aprender. And this will also help us with interdependence and with putting ourselves in others' shoes. Because what is the usual way in when someone condemns something and basically they just stop empathizing? When they say that something is inhuman, right? Such and such treatment of people is inhuman. Such and such crime is inhuman. When I usually hear this kind of cries that assume that humanity is like one thing, one pure thing, what I'm hearing usually is someone saying that they won't have any restraints with other people, right? Oh no, if there's someone approaches my family and attacks them, I will become this fantasy that it's a very male fantasy, male fantasy. I will become this kind of ninja, right? Or like Walker, Texas Ranger, I can kill them. You're just fantasizing about killing people, dude. That's all there is to it. You're just looking for the reason. Entonces digo, y esto nos va a permitir darnos cuenta por qué deshumanizar también se vuelve algo estrategia, ¿no? Cuando yo escucho a la gente que deshumaniza situaciones o personas, empiezan esencialmente a traumas. So how should we go about it? Once we understand this idea of dissolve, re-rise, watch what flows, integrate and begin again, we should start trying to be interesting and stop being basic. Because we tend to be a little bit basic, right? So this is my proposal approach. 20% humans, 20% animal, 20% xenos, whichever you think, like aliens. Aliens from the movie Aliens, at least for me, very interesting. And if you like, 20% electromagnetic force, how it feels to be a laser, right? Imagine this being a laser. This is a wonderful thing. It's a light. It's light, a kind of light that just hates, burns everything that touches. This is wonderful. And dimensions, right? How it feels to be time. By doing this, by kind of having a different experience every single night, you will start to realize that all these things that you take as appearances are in fact mental conventions, that we are actually living not in reality, but in an hallucination by consensus, right? And we even haven't been consulted to it, we just were born to. So the way to do it is to become, as Erickson would put it, very curious. We have to be very curious about things. We have to be almost amazed all the time, like we can fly metal things in the sky right now to go and meet each other. And this wonder has to make us wonder a little bit what being a human is. And I don't think that there is an actual answer to this question. But because there is no pure human, because there is no pure Buddhism, we might as well focus basically on understanding that everything that appears has the same value, right? It's a complete alienation of what is to be a human, which is why I call it xenobudism. Entonces, por eso lo que yo les digo es, hay que dejar de ser aburridos, ¿no? Entonces hay que intentar ser, ir practicando diferentes cosas, ser humanos, ser animales, ser alienígenas, ser fuerzas electromagnéticas, ser dimensiones, ¿no? Ser tiempo, por ejemplo, ser una tormenta búdica, o ser el espectro visible de luz. ¿Por qué? Porque esto nos va a hacer darnos cuenta que todas nuestras instrucciones, todo lo que llamamos realidad, es sencillamente una experiencia visible. Y esto de a poquito nos va a permitir relajarnos, va a permitirnos alienar de esta idea de la humanidad, y por eso esta alineación de la idea de la humanidad yo la llamo xenobudismo. So with that, thank you so much. My advice is that you do not abhor the sinos. Disbelieve that. Just become the sinos. Remember, you are a Buddha for all beings. If all beings means that you have to become the sinos of the elder or the sinos of the orcs, of the Buddha of the orcs, you have to become that, right? Every single being is in our field of practice. And when I say every single being, it's every single being. Con esto, muchas gracias. Y si les parece, lo que les quiero decir es, tenemos que ayudar a todos los seres. Y cuando decimos todos los seres, absolutamente todos los seres. So, any question, comments? At this point, insults, we're finishing. Yes, Erickson, please.
Okay, I have to say that this is a new highlight for me. Never have I gone to a Dharma teaching where my takeaway is, don't be a basic bitch Buddha, but become fierce, fabulous, and spider fuckable. Yes. Mind blown.
Thank you. Erickson decía que es la primera vez que le pasa que la primera vez que hicimos que no sea una perra básica y que tiene que agacharse, como se llama, arañas. Sí, ya ustedes ya saben que es así. Es por ahí el camino. Thank you. Anyone else? Any other comment? Question? Yes, Lama Jimmy.
First, thank you, Lama, for giving us this teaching. I don't think anyone would really put themselves to be a sentient light ray. One time I played a video game where you were a flower. I'm reminded of your teaching last on the mushroom race. I think breaking open these clinging and grasping to the body is perfect for everybody. So thank you for it again, Lama.
Yo le decía que nunca se ocurrió hacer el tema de mayor láser porque se acordaba de los se llama hongos. Sí, es por ahí. ¿No? One thing, Lama Jili, that I really recommend is that one should always try to, at least this is my way, right? I don't know if anyone should do it. It's just my personal experience. Here in Argentina, there is all this new age thing to become a being of light, become a being of light. And being myself, when someone comes say, hey, the truth is you have to become a being of light, the first thing I do is I go to sleep and I try it, right? And when I remember becoming a being of light, it was like this laser fire that essentially burninated everything. And I was like, yes, this is great. They're right. You're just going to burn everything, basically. So I went the other day when I was in this routine, I was like, yes, this is so good. You basically become the fire at the end of the eon. And it was like, no, this is like very dark. And I was like, no, it's the opposite of dark. There's no darkness everywhere. You're just pure light. And everything just burns in electromagnetic radiation. And I was like, no, this is terrible. But I think that in a way, the best thing you can be with this kind of thing is become very literal and try to test everything, because this is the way in which you go beyond this change of metaphor and method, so to speak. We have to become, but to transcend language, we have to use it. Yes, but in some ways we have to also leave it behind, right? Yes, vibrate high. I also did this one. It's like earthquake. This is why I say like a phenomenon. If you become very high, you become an earthquake and destroy everything. It's also one. What is amazing to me is that all these kind of metaphors becomes way of destroying the world. And essentially what they reveal is that you don't like the world where you are now, right? All these major transformation, ascent, they're always about leaving the world behind, right? In a way. So it's kind of the opposite of what we're trying to achieve here, but they're very useful because in a way, they give you insight on how those people need to be helped. Yes, exactly. So when people say, vibrate a lot, you might say, are you sure you really want to do this? Are you really want to? Decía que, por ejemplo, transformarse en un ser de luz es transformarse en láser, ¿no? O vibrar muy alto, como decía ahí Luis, es también generar terremotos. Entonces, bueno, de alguna forma son todas formas de destrucción del mundo, esas metáforas. Pero practiquen transformarse en una luz o en un terremoto. Thank you. Oh, and yeah. Before we leave, one thing I would be remiss is to mention what brought this idea of using Sino, which is the Xenofeminist Manifesto by Laboria Robotics. If you haven't read this, there is a wonderful, let me see if I can find the site. It's still Laboria, if it's still online. Laboria, yes, I think it's still. If you haven't read this, my advice is it's a very interesting text. If you like, it's a very interesting text in a way of the same things that we do. I think that most of what happens now is happening now. That started with Donna Haraway, right? It's not started right now. It started with the cyber politics and the cyber manifesto and everything else. In a way, it is becoming slowly this transhumanist, positive, technological feminist way. It's becoming a little bit of what is kind of flowing in the same direction of the strand of Buddhism that we are. This idea of Shambhala, this idea of leaving this hallowed idea of humanity and status quo behind and making everything a pure land. This is, I think, the way it's happening right now within a more, if you like, traditionally scholastic academic, institutional academic Western approach. Oh, yes, it's an incredible fun read. This, and if you like a very extremely fun read, these are the books. There is a very strong Bolivian, kind of, we could say almost like biopunk approach to this, which is a kind of a strange Bolivian tradition of melding sci-fi with politics. Absolutely advice. There is one in which people essentially become like cosmic Buddhas, and the New Orleans, basically, it becomes like there's a couple of people who don't want to become Buddhas, and they're like, oh no, this is the worst, it's an Evangelion thing. but everyone else is very happy. So it's a very Maximiliano Barrientos wrote a lot of stories. Well, any other question? Any other comment? Please.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I think this was really, really fantastic, and also quite the I think it demonstrates the stretching or going beyond what a lot of, I don't know, what I've learned to go beyond of in terms of my concepts of self or what's possible, or what we really are, what it means to be a person, what it means to be really working for all sentient beings. And I think it is, if you can look at if you have this experience of seeing the perspectives from radically different perspectives of that of a spider, of a scorpion, of a person, and really work with that, I think it becomes, even having a little bit of a real experience of what that's like, it then becomes very clear when there's other groups or politics that start to say, like, oh, this is the right way. Oh, this is the only way. And then it's like, what? You're still people. You're still talking within a perspective of like a personhood, and then a very specific version of a kind of body, or a tradition, or a race, or a gender, these sort of things here. And so it quickly is like, this can't be good for all beings in that way. So it provides a very good, I don't know, I think this is a great model in order to evaluate narratives that float around, as well as our own self narratives of this comment of being afraid of drowning. I think that perfectly, I think, describes maybe sort of the fear I have felt about even just like trying something new, or, oh, I've never identified this way before. Oh, I didn't grow up in this family, or, oh, only these sorts of people could try to do this thing. But then you meet them and they're like, what? You're not special. You're not some amazing, intelligent, crazy God person. Like, I could definitely do this. And then maybe you try. But if you don't have those experiences, or if you don't have that sort of insight, I don't know. If everyone at least take away that, what is it? Your own narrative is about yourself that limit you from helping others or literally doing anything don't necessarily need to exist. You could become a singing, dancing, flying Buddha of pigeons internationally if you want, and it's all possible in that way. And you really showed this, I think, in the Xeno Buddhism. So I'm excited to read this manifesto you shared, and continue to practice this. Thank you so much, Guru.
Thank you so much. And yes, it is, you are proof that is possible. And also, there's this is very stupid thing that I always have found, in which people have learned, in a way, have internalized what we would call in psychoanalysis the master slave, right? Which you'll never get there. And they get an enjoyment from that, which is, okay, if that's what you want, but this is a choice. It's a choice. And you can see this it's part of my critique of all Buddhism's usual thought, in that it is presented slowly as things you will never achieve. Whereas, for example, in some traditions, you have teachers saying, okay, you should have very strong liberation experience within 12 years. That's a usual, right? A good time frame. And then people come like, no. For 3 years, you have to wander, and then you may be born in a family. And you're like, dude, that's like we going back to Mahayana. and then to Theravada, and then, it's like, only if you are born a monk. No. The whole idea for practice as Vajrayana should be liberation for all. That's what separates us from the rest. And yet, this turns up again and again. So yeah, totally agree with you. You can do it. Put the focus on others. Stop trying to say, no, this is not for me. Just relax it. And of course, you can still say, this is not for me. That's absolutely perfect to say. But one can do more things than one has freedom. Right? That's absolutely, or at least in my experience, if I cannot thought what I was going to do at my age when I was young, I've never thought about this. Like, not in 1,000 years. And yet here we are. This is samsara. Thank you so much. Yes. Sí, la mayor es que en realidad para hacer un pequeño resumen, que uno no tiene que limitarse, sino que, fíjense, él viaja por todo el mundo enseñando canto y danza y trabajando con palomas, y sin embargo, es algo que es posible. Hay que salir del punto de vista de las estructuras que nos atrapan. So, with that, Lama Shara, would you like to give some words to close this beautiful Nirvana Overdrive?
Sure. Is this the third or the fourth one we've done? We're quite on a
It's
roll.
the fourth one.
Incredible. And I think the best one so far. So we're going strength to strength. I'm happy. I think the numbers have grown every time as well, which is pretty good for the time frame that it's in and the weekend, and that everybody will give their time to the Dharma is really inspiring for my practice as well. So, would you like me to close with the dedication?
Yes, give me 1 second. I'll translate this, and then
Sure.
I'll translate the post. Entonces dice, la mayor está muy contento, dice que es el cuarto Nirvana Overdrive, que hemos crecido en cada uno de los Nirvana Overdrives, que cada vez son más interesantes, y que la verdad que él aprecia mucho que todos tengamos este momento para juntarnos en un fin de semana, pese a todo el resto de las cosas que tenemos.
So I'll close with a dedication of the words of the composer of the 37 Bodhisattva practices. That's Tome Zampo.
Entonces va a terminar con las palabras de los 37 bodhisattvas Tome Zampo.
Homage to the Guru and to the three jewels.
Homenaje al Guru y a las tres joyas.
May I, in each and every one of my lives to come, gain a precious human form, free and well-favored, and thereafter, may I encounter sublime spiritual guides and continuously apply myself to the sacred Dharma.
Que en todas las vidas tengo una forma humana bien hecha para encontrarme con gurus y con aquellos que enseñan el sublime Dharma.
May I never cling to the pleasures of ordinary existence, nor become attached to the extreme of an inferior nirvana. For the sake of all beings, as numerous as space is vast, may I strive to accomplish unsurpassed awakening.
Que nunca me quede atrapado en los placeres mundanos, ni tampoco me quede en el nirvana menor, sino que por todos los seres sin excepción, vastos como el espacio, consiga el máximo despertar.
Having realized the ultimate beyond conceptual limitations and the illusory nature of the relative, may I never be distracted even for so much as an instant, as I diligently strive to take this profound truth to heart.
Que habiendo realizado la naturaleza última, nunca me distraiga, sino que siempre intenté considerar lo mismo.
Even in this very life, may I reject all that is unwholesome, and constantly strive to apply the virtuous Dharma. May all my actions of body, speech, and mind always be devoted solely to others' well-being.
Que en esta vida yo deje todo lo que es negativo y que me dedique solamente al Dharma y que lo haga para ayudar a todos los seres con todo mi ser.
When it's time to let go of this life, may the force of my faith and aspiration carry me to the western pure land of Sukhavati, there to be guided by Amitabha in his compassion.
Y cuando sea el momento de dejar esta vida, que la fuerza de mis aspiraciones y mis votos me lleve a la tierra pura de Sukhavati para que él me guíe y me pueda ayudar.
And now to seal with the mantras of capacity that expand our dedication.
Ya se llama con los mantras.
Om Dari Dari Bandari Soa Jaya Jaya Siddhi Siddhi Pala Pala Hasha Sama Mama Kolim Samanta. Sarvamangalam. Thank you, everyone.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Thank you everyone. Thank you, Lamsha, for that beautiful closing. And we'll see each other on the next Nirvana Overdrive. Muchas gracias a todos y nos vemos entonces en el próximo Nirvana Overdrive. Bye bye, thank you. Oh, those who are going to the yoga chara teaching will be back in 10 minutes. Entonces, aquellos que vienen a la yoga chara, nos vemos en 10 minutos. Bye bye.